So I always had this question in my mind, what is better, an oil-based product or some water-based paint for preserving decks, fences, and front doors, any horizontal surfaces of exterior wood? I always felt that to preserve exterior wood structures like decks and fences, they should be treated with an oil-based stain that would soak deep into the wood. The hours I spent researching this on the internet led me to Caleb Roth of Stain and Seal Experts at their Stain University.
So we were a stain contractor here in Nashville, and we used a lot of stains. We used a stain that was made here in America. We used a lot of it, and we had some failures out of it. And the first probably 20 failures we had, I figured it was my fault. I was doing something wrong, so I went back and fixed it. And 21, 22, 23 came around, and I said, something's got to change here. I got to figure out what this is, because this is costing me time, money, and reputation. And so I called the manufacturer, and I had a lot of detail. I'm a detail-oriented person. I had records on moisture contents and what procedures that we followed, pictures, videos, and things like that. And I just said, hey, here's all the data. Here's what's happening. This is happening over and over. I said, I don't want free stain. I don't want money. I just want to know what I can do to fix it. What am I doing wrong, and how do I fix it? And this big company said, well, improper application.
I think about it now.
Yeah.
And that was what they said.
Right.
Well, what do I do to fix it? We don't know, but it was improper application. And so at that point, I was pretty let down with the world. And I decided that, if I was going to pay for a bad stain, I just make my own bad stain. So I decided, how hard could it be? And I think just like John F. Kennedy said, how do we get to the moon is just to have the will to get there. I just had the will to figure out how to make stain, and so I just started working on it and made a stain. What makes our stain different is that it's a penetrating oil. It goes into the wood. There's no solvents added into our stain, or at least very little. Most stains use a solvent as a carrier to carry the stain into the wood, not an oil. And when those solvents get really hot, they can flash dry, and now you have nothing to carry your stain into the wood. Or if it's really cold or really wet, those solvents can evaporate before the wood's dry enough to accept the stain. So where we have an oil base, that it doesn't dry, so that oil can stick around as long as it needs to in wet weather to wait and go into the wood when the wood dries. Or if it's really hot, the stain doesn't matter. The oil, it won't evaporate. The oil is important because it conditions the wood. It stops warping, cracking, and twisting, which is the number one callback for fences and decks in America today.
So there's this big debate. I spent hours researching oil versus water-based, because they say that latex-based, the technology's better, but you would disagree.
Sure. Well, the technology probably is better, and what I mean by that is the technology. Try to think of a good analogy. The technology is better. It is better technology, meaning that there's a lot of technology in water-based coatings, but wood is old technology, right? It's old tech, it's wood, and it dries, it shrinks, it cracks, it dries unevenly, and it causes things to warp and twist. And so the new technology is fantastic as long as it stays intact. But as soon as the wood moves and moves and moves, and you get a little crack into the coating, or you get a place where the sun burns through, then we have a problem. The problem is moisture gets in, and now we have this film across the top, a barrier. So once water goes in and it can't get out, think of your kitchen sink leaking underneath like a laminated floor. Well, you never even know there's a leak there until boom, all of a sudden one day you got black mold throughout your whole house, the floor bubbles up, and it's a disaster, right? And that's kind of like these coatings work. If the wood can breathe, but we want to slow that breathing down. We want to slow water in and out, way down, and oils can do that. And when we slow all of that down, we can let wood breathe. So if you have a deck that's close to the ground, it can breathe and let the moisture out. Or if you have a film, it traps the moisture under it. It can cause premature rotting. And the same way is if the wood is just wet in general, somehow moisture gets introduced. If it dries quickly, warps, cracks, and twists. You look down your fence that was once straight, and now we have this craziness going on. Same with deck boards that cup because of the drying happens so quickly. So we're just slowing that process down.
Yeah.
We're conditioning the wood. We're keeping cracks from happening, things like that.
So wood should be conditioned or treated with an oil that soaks into the wood, and that's what, because wood naturally has oil
Wood
in it.
naturally has oils in it, so that's what we're doing. We want to replace and replenish what was already there, and trick the tree into thinking it's still alive. That's the whole idea. And that's it.
Trick the tree.
The tree thinks it's alive. When you cut
Yeah.
it down, it just doesn't know where its roots are. So
Yeah.
we want to kind of continue that. And like I said, the water-based stains do have a lot of technology. There's billions of dollars behind it, but they can't figure out why do these things crack and still
Yeah.
cost a ton of money to replace. You got to strip them, you got to sand them, you got to blast them off. With a penetrating stain, we just use the pigmentation as sort of a gauge, like a fuel gauge. So if the stain is starting to fade a little bit, well, that just means it's time to re-oil the wood. You just add a maintenance coat, and it's easy peasy. It's so easy.
A lot easier.
And the American Institute of Architects has stated that on some, large homes that are wooden cabins, things like that, 5 to 6,000 square foot homes that are made of wood, it could be as much as $100,000 over a 10-year period of savings and maintenance costs using an oil-based versus water-based. So
you can keep that
it really
wood.
does make a difference.
Not only did I become more convinced that an oil-based product is the only material you should ever use, I found a better product that would soak deeper into the wood, and I could offer my customers a longer lasting option with much lower maintenance cost.